Countdown is real. Hello, and we are back. Hey, girl. Hey.
Hi, hi.
Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for
Happy
having
4
me.
months of sober curiosity.
Ooh, 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 ooh. Thank you.
Woo-hoo! Yeah, we are here in the doing the Mindful Constitution podcast today, and I'm with my friend Lidiann, who is celebrating 4 months alcohol-free today. So it's a heavy on the sober curiosity episode. And Lidiann is a embodiment and breathwork coach, which is pretty cool. It makes sense that you would want to take a little break from alcohol, that being the work that you do.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. How are you today before we dive in?
I'm good. I didn't realize I hadn't paused to celebrate yet today that I hit 4 months, and it's kind of wild that I'm here and that it's been 4 months. So I'm good. I'm happy. I'm vibing. I'm just, yeah.
I know. I always love watching people uh experiencing the first few months or that first year of alcohol
Mm.
elimination and all the different waves of emotions and realizations, especially just because it's such a different experience when you're just experimenting with sobriety as opposed to having hit a rock bottom where there's all these different routes to alcohol free living, right? But it's just always cool to relive through other people the excitement of newly alcohol-free living. And
Yeah. Yeah, it does feel new, but also not new at the same time. Like it's this weird, like I'm just accustomed to now feeling so great that I
yeah,
want to just feel this way forever.
I know. Yeah. Oh, I know. I have all the questions about your sober curious path at this point so far, but I wanted to start by just having you explain a little bit about what embodiment coaching is.
Yeah.
And I mean, most of us are familiar with breathwork, but feel free to explain how that ties into embodiment coaching.
Yeah. So, all embodiment work is about getting us back to our bodies, reconnecting with our bodies. And of course, like breath work is one of the most powerful tools in bringing awareness back to like, how am I feeling right now? Like, what is my nervous system state? Am I activated? Am I at ease? I think we are in a very mind masculine driven society, and there's often like this disconnect from the body, and embodiment
Mhm.
work helps bring us back into the body, into the present moment. And breath work also allows us to tap into the wisdom of our body. Like there is stored emotions, and there's also repressed trauma and wisdom about what we actually want in life. And so breathwork is just a really powerful, also ancient healing tool that brings us back to our own innate wisdom and
Mhm.
brings us back to our empowerment. Like, yeah, bringing back the power to ourselves. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
they've both just been transformational modalities for me, and I love guiding people through both of them.
Yeah, so good. Yeah, totally what you said about embodiment, reconnecting to our body in a masculine driven society
Mm.
or kind of masculine energy driven society where, and I always like to clarify too with the idea of masculine and feminine energy. It's really interesting. I just did a monthly meetup with another breathwork coach about embracing our divine feminine energy. And I
Mm.
always like to emphasize too that it doesn't really have anything to do with gender. It's really this energy that exists in all of us, this kind of more masculine energy being, say, like action oriented or productive versus and a multitude of other things. And then more feminine can be nurturing and intuitive and slowing down to speed up and receptive. And so, yeah, I think what you said is so true that a lot of our society kind of places more value on some of those masculine traits, which
Mhm.
just means that we have to have more of a concerted effort to reconnect to some of those more feminine traits. And breathwork is such a great way to do it. And also, I think what you said about kind of tuning inward and looking at our individuality,
Mm.
our own uniqueness and stuff is really exciting stuff.
It
Embracing.
is. Yeah, and to add on to that, breathwork is a feminine leaning practice, but it also helps us to find that balance. Because to your point, it's not gender based, it's energy based, of
Mhm.
finding that balance between doing and being. Like, how can I do the things that I want to do in life in a way that feels good? And just finding that synergy between how I want to show up, how I want to lead, and then doing the actual thing in a way that feels good.
Yeah, yes. So connecting to the process so it feels aligned rather than
Yeah.
forced.
Yes.
Working in flow with our energy instead of kind of forcing it all. I've definitely been in that space so often where I'm just focused on production mode and it's like, is this even fun? Fun here? Just like forcing myself through to the next like achievement. And we kind of lose sight of the fact that the process is miserable. And so yeah, I love the word synergy between doing and being. And some people are the opposite, where maybe they are slower moving and they need a little bit more action to
Mhm.
balance out some of that
Yeah.
hesitancy or apprehension about taking the next step. And so everyone has a mixture of the both. So tell me about what inspired your sober curious path starting in January. You started at the beginning of the year,
I
January.
started, I did literally my last sip was clinking for New Year's. And so the
Yeah.
following day was my marker. And what ignited it? It connects to what we were just talking about with the being and the doing. Drinking was starting to really get in the way of how I wanted to be and how
Mhm.
I wanted to do. I was honestly, I just got really tired of feeling like garbage. And it
Mhm.
felt really out of integrity that I was choosing to consume something that was leading me to feel so unwell. And then on the other end, I was doing this embodiment work and connecting myself and helping others connect to how it is they want to live their lives. And it just felt like it was really in conflict with the life that I wanted to be living. And I decided to just take a pause, like a long, hard pause, and set out to do 90 days. I was like 12 weeks of just taking this out of my life, removing something that doesn't feel like it's serving me right now. And
Mhm.
I didn't think that I would continue. I thought it was just a nice, clean, long break, and then I would reintroduce it in a way that felt good. And here we are. I'm at month 4 today, and it still feels good not to introduce it. So I'm just keeping up with that.
Mhm. Yeah, totally. Is that incongruency when you're working on your own health and healing or trying to help others do it. And then it's like ingesting alcohol on a regular basis where it can really affect your energy and anxiety and confidence and your ability to,
Mhm.
especially in such a sensitive, intimate kind of way with coaching or breath work. Um, Definitely contributes to imposter syndrome for sure.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
and you touched on something too with anxiety. I mean, it's May's Mental Health Awareness Month, and I'm doing a lot of work to bring more attention to our well-being. It was really setting my well-being back. Like every time I would do a meditation or a breathwork practice or, intentional movement, it felt like I was just reversing so much work and I was spending more time trying to get to a baseline than just feeling really well all the time. And yeah, prioritize my mental health has always been a key part of my growth healing journey. It's what ignited me to go down this healing path. And yeah, supporting it feels very, very, very served by keeping alcohol out.
yeah. Yeah, we really just get used to the negative impact it has and kind of give ourselves permission to have compromised mental health because we know that it's caused by alcohol, but it's still just this weird relationship that we have with it societally where we
Mm,
accept that we're going to be depressed and anxious from drinking and no one really questions it. It's just like excusable because it is caused by alcohol, but also we don't have to do that to ourselves. And you said one thing too about your mental health, being kind of the inspiration behind working towards coaching, or on your own, how, like,
Mm.
kind of the catalyst for your own personal exploration of healing. So if you don't mind sharing more about, what that looked like for you, I would love to hear.
I would love to. So it was about 4 years ago, I had my first experience with psychedelics.
Mm,
And in that experience, I was presented a vision of my life years down the line where I hadn't made any changes, any life changes, and I was still just as depressed, just as anxious, just as disconnected from myself, living on autopilot. And that vision was really the catalyst for me taking action. The very next day was the day that I started sharing with my partner, here's where I'm at, like being really transparent about the support that I needed. And from there, I continued to take small steps, sometimes bigger steps than others, but started taking full ownership and accountability for where I was and where I wasn't in life, and refusing to intentionally create a life for myself that didn't feel good. That was the biggest thing for me, was realizing I'm creating
mm,
this life where I don't feel well, which means I also have the power to create a life that does feel well, and recognizing that power, and saying I'm going to start to turn the ship in a different direction, because if I can create a life that feels like garbage, then I can create a life that feels great.
oh my God. Can you take a moment of silence for this? It's so good. It's just such a revelation to have, to really step away from victim mindset and realize that
Mm,
there's obviously, we all have different circumstances in our lives. Ultimately, it really is the perspective we choose to take on whatever hand we're dealt, and how we play the cards, as they say, and kind of
mhm,
just acknowledging, yeah, if I'm creating this life in which I'm feeling like shit all the time, maybe, just maybe, I have the power to create a life where I feel good. And it's so hard to kind of break out of some of those choices that we actively know are making us feel like crap, whether it's
mhm,
drinking habits, eating habits, even relationship habits, and stepping away from relationships that, like, maybe we habitually spend time with people and it's kind of out of routine or just history of relationships, and eventually realizing, wow, like, I don't really feel that great when I spend time with these people, or I don't really feel that great when I drink every single weekend or every day after work, or I don't really feel that great when I'm not taking care of myself physically, and
mm.
drawing that awareness to it is so big. I'm glad I asked, because psychedelics for the win there.
Oh my gosh, yes, psychedelic for many wins.
Yeah, that's pretty profound experience to have, and then to just immediately
Mm,
take action is quite amazing, because I think a lot of people sit back in their life and are unwilling to do the work, and I've definitely been in that space myself, where just like wondering why I'm so unhappy, but then just glaringly making choices in direct opposition to a life that would create happiness.
yeah, I mean, I think playing it forward has been one of my themes, and I think it ties to what happened when I had that experience. Was I was provided, like, the vision, played forward, of what my life would look like, not taking action, and I do the same thing with even the times where I kinda want that drink, like, everyone else is drinking, and I kinda want that drink, and I play it forward. I'm like, "How will I feel if I choose this path versus this path?" And starting to
Mhm.
create, like, those new grooves in our brain, so that those patterns that are old and keeping us in this low energy, low vibrating state can start to lose their hold on us. Because I think that's what so many of our behaviors and patterns are doing. They have a hold on us because they're familiar and they're ingrained from, a neuroscience standpoint.
Totally. Yeah. The rewiring of the brain and our subconscious beliefs is so big. And realizing that a lot of these kind of belief systems we apply to our behaviors aren't even that accurate. We think that we romanticize the idea of a drink, and then it is a really common tool used in the recovery community, is called play the tape forward. Have you heard
Mm,
about
mm-mm,
that?
no.
Yeah, it's just playing exactly what you said is, thinking about when you're feeling a craving for a drink, you usually think about the immediate gratification of giving in to the craving, but you don't think about the cascade of events that you're typically going to experience or feel beyond the indulgence of a craving. And so it's just all about playing forward. How am I going to feel about this after I abandon the progress I've made? Or how am I going to feel if I end up having 10 drinks and get wasted? Or how am I going to feel with the anxiety I have afterwards, or guilt or whatever around it? And I know the context within sober curiosity is a little different, but definitely a really helpful tool when we're trying to form new habits.
Yeah.
That are
Any change.
mm-hmm. So, okay, when you, I know one question you said that you got a lot is like, oh, are you never drinking again? What's your motive? And so what do you normally say to people that are already asking, how long are you not going to drink for?
Yeah. Is this forever? Like, are you done? Are you done for good? That's been the main question. Like, are you done with alcohol for good? My response is, I am right now. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's an old part of me that would obsess about planning for the future. And that was like a safety for me. It's like having a roadmap, having everything detailed out. And a lot of the inner work that I've done has been allowing myself to be present right here and to make decisions that are going to benefit me right now and tomorrow, but not to think, okay, 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now, like what's the game plan? So for right now and for tomorrow, it feels really good and really serving for me not to consume, to not put something in my body that energetically weighs me down, physically weighs me down, mentally weighs me down. So yeah, my response is right now. For right now, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And then when you decided that you were going to take a break and it's kind of like evolved into a longer, more extended break, how was that received by family, friends?
I think there are some who are more excited and more encouraging about my life choices. And I think that there are others that it may be triggering something within them about their
Mhm.
life choices. And I think something that's interesting that I've noticed specifically with this type of behavior change, that there's a lot of, because there's so much conditioning, I've heard so many of the same responses when it comes to consuming alcohol, like, well, everything in moderation, right? Like it's okay in moderation. And what I find so fascinating is that I don't see that sort of response with like cigarettes or anything else that we know is proven to not be really beneficial for our body. And so I think that's been some of the sort of conditioning or just like cultural resistance around removing something that's so ingrained. I've seen that come up a lot, and that's just been really interesting to observe as someone
Mhm.
who's kind of choosing to go against a pretty big social grain.
Yeah, totally is something that I think what you said is what I think of is there's a lot of times when you're making choices that do go against societal norms or programming and other people are going with the grain, it's those statements justify their choices. And I think intuitively deep down I mean most of us know alcohol is not really good for us, and so it's one of those things where we have really normalized
Mm.
drinking, and so people have accepted that and embrace alcohol into their lives. And so then when people are presenting this alternative paradigm, like you don't actually have to drink if you don't want to, and there's a lot of benefits that can be served in it, and maybe drinking doesn't have many benefits, as many as we're told. It's just people having to wrap their brain around a new way of thinking, and it can feel extreme to some people, especially maybe people who really don't drink a lot and they do have, a drink here and there, which I find are usually not the people that tend to say stuff like that. The people that tend to say everything is good in moderation are usually not the people who even drink in moderation. You're like, "Ooh, okay, Karen, but you have like a bottle of wine every day, and so that's not moderation, but you know." So I think it's just interesting, right, to see like people's defense mechanisms and how they
Mm,
operate. And um, I find that a lot of the people who really drink very lightly are like, "That's awesome. I barely even drink too, you know," and they really don't have alcohol is very peripheral in their life, whereas the people who say things that tend to lean more defensively usually enjoy drinking.
mhm. And what's interesting is that I might have responded like that if it were me a year or 2 or 3 years ago. I
Mhm.
remember when a friend of mine shared that she just didn't drink at all, and she didn't share like, "Oh, I'm taking a break," or anything. She just said, "I just don't drink alcohol." And I remember in that moment thinking like, "Oh god, like, I could never." And then immediately thinking like, "Oh, well, that's a little scary." Like I heard the internal dialogue of like, oh, I could never cut that out of my life, and then immediately wondering, what's that about? What's that
Right.
about that I have resistance in just the internal thought process of cutting that out? What does that mean about my relationship with alcohol if the thought of having it out of my life kind of freaks me out a bit?
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, I was definitely there too, for sure. Just thinking like, "Oh, that would suck." Like the attitude about it, you know? That would suck. It's like, no, what sucks is you binge drinking and hating yourself and having anxiety every weekend and then judging someone else because they like want to live their best life. That makes you suck, Katie. But I definitely did had similar internal dialogues, and I remember too. My mom, she was in recovery when I was growing up, and I definitely participated in the like alcoholics versus like normal drinkers kind of thinking. Like,
Mm,
why would you ever give up alcohol voluntarily unless you were an alcoholic? And I remember her even, when I was young saying stuff about drinking, and I was like, not everyone's an alcoholic, like a little teenager a hole. Not everyone's an alcoholic like you, mom. Okay. And now I'm like, oh my God, what a little biatch, but also just shows like how we're so conditioned to think about our relationship with alcohol, that if it's not that it's like a problem for other people. But if you've not like completely destroyed your life, then you don't really need to worry about it.
mm, mhm,
And then I remember too getting older and having friends slowly, like you said, kind of giving up alcohol, and I was intrigued by it, but I wasn't at a point where I thought like it would be something that was possible for me. Okay,
same.
I was definitely curious, like, oh wow, you must feel really good all the time. And it was kind of like planting the seeds, of, oh, I guess you don't, not everyone has to drink, you don't have to drink. And you hear people say stuff like that all the time about weddings or just different occasions or celebrations. It's like, well, I have to go to this, so I have to drink. Like, you actually don't. And it can be
Don't.
fun without it.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing that definitely freaked me out. And the thing that I've come to realize is that I don't need alcohol to have fun. I don't need alcohol to allow me to be my best self or my wildest self. Like, I don't need this permission slip outside of myself for me to show up how I want. Like, I'm safe, I'm good without it. And
Mhm.
yeah, I think there's an old version of me that would have thought, yeah, I can't do social settings without the drink. Like, it's more fun and it's better that way with the drink.
Mhm.
And I've learned that that's not true, at least for me.
Isn't examining your programming wild? And the
Yeah.
things you think you cannot do or you can do, or I've realized that a lot with just people talking about pregnancy, even, and just, oh, I could never do that, or I could never do this. And just observing our societal dialogue around things like
Mm,
birthing and drinking and these ways that we look at it, that's so disempowering. It's like, well, you
so
actually can.
disempowering.
And where did you get that thought? You've just been inundated with the thought that you can't socialize without a drink, or you can't do certain, these are all like, there's only one way to do things. And it's really wild that we let that subconscious programming dictate our choices in an unexamined way for a lot of our life.
Mm, Yes. Yes. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I just adopted that thinking without any questioning of it. And then to open my eyes and realize actually there's so many more beautiful aspects of life that I'm completely
Mhm.
bypassing thinking this way just because everyone else does.
Yeah, and you said too, like it's a very disempowered way of thinking. And for us to not need to rely on a substance, a person, anything outside of ourselves to be our best self is the most empowering stance I think that we can take in our lives. Is to
Mhm.
really lift the veil and come to the awareness of I can do whatever I want. I can show up however I want. I can be my full authentic self without needing any sort of, I mean, call it a crutch, call it whatever you want. That's going to be the thing that's going to give you permission to be you, breaking free from that and, yeah, dropping into your own badass energy. I mean, like, wait, I can just show up as me without anything else. Dope.
Yeah, seriously. So true. And I think we forget that a lot and we like look for permission so often from society. And honestly, I don't think many people know what the hell they're doing. It's and we're like looking around for answers. Like no one knows. Just do what you want to do and what feels best to you because half these people out here are just as confused as the rest of us. Even the people that we think have authority, it's like we place so much importance and give so much credibility to different positions in society and stuff. It's like everyone's just a person trying to figure this out and do uh trying to live a fulfilled life. And I mean, ultimately, I would think reach their potential. And so being able to look inward for answers is just such a powerful strategy that we don't do a lot of the time. And so
Mm.
I wanted to ask about what are some of, I know we're kind of like touching upon all of these things, but what are some of the biggest challenges and benefits you've seen from your 4 months so far without
Mm.
alcohol?
I think the biggest challenge that I wasn't expecting was what we've talked about in the social aspect of being in a social setting and navigating a space that I was so used to being intoxicated. I was so used to leaning on alcohol whenever I felt a little uncomfortable. I'll just take a shot and not having that. I remember the first sort of larger social setting that I was in, and for the most part, most people were drinking, and I felt so emotionally raw and exposed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I realized that alcohol was this a bit of a blanket for me to just numb out uncomfortable edges, whether it was a person's behavior or a comment or something that would maybe rub me. I could just lean on the drink to numb that out and just blur that and not zoom in on it at all. I think that was the biggest challenge in social settings, was not reaching for the thing that I was so accustomed to reaching for, to feel okay. And again, like to feel like I could be my full expressive, wild rambunctious self that I often would step into when I'd had a good amount of drinks. And yeah, just starting to realize that I had been outsourcing my power and navigating the social terrain, seeing how embedded it is, like everywhere, walking through airports and it's everywhere, on beaches and it's everywhere. It's almost like when you're going to go buy a car and you have like the color and the make and the model in mind, and you're like, no one has this car. And then once you start thinking about it, you see it everywhere and you're like, wow, everyone
Mm-hmm.
has this car.
Like everyone's drunk all the time. Everyone's always drinking. Like it's immediate. That's everywhere. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't realize how like prevalent it really was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And not just the actual alcohol itself, but the thinking that goes along with it. The thinking that, and what's also really cool to see though, and I'm wondering your thoughts on this too, is that when you shift your inner reality, your outer reality shifts. And I found in my own process that I started meeting so many more people that were just choosing not to drink and or drink very little. And I think what's hard is the transitional period between your life reflecting choices you used to make when you're trying to make new ones, and then
Mm.
feeling very alienated in your new choices, but your old reality. But then once your new reality starts to mirror it, it's so liberating because you realize, wow, there actually is. I was surrounded by people making similar choices to me. I was reinforcing my own programming. Our subconscious is always seeking to validate itself. And so when you're thinking, oh, life could not be fun without alcohol, then you just have all these experiences, people, places, and things that are kind of affirming that. Whereas when you
Hmm.
decide to start living differently, I met you. I met tons. The women in wellness, I remember the first time I said something, everyone was like, oh, I stopped drinking too. And like, I don't drink either. Like, whoa, this is
That was
kind
the
of
first, yeah, that event was the first time that I realized that there's actually a either sober curious or just like sober-ish community that existed. Was hearing about your work, hearing about another business owner who I think was 2 years into her journey. And at that point, I was just like 3 weeks. And I was like, oh, whoa.
Mhm.
And I thought to myself, 2 years, I wonder how amazing she feels 2 years in. And that was the first piece of evidence, the first little seed that was planted of actually, this feels really good to to
Mhm.
to pull this out of my life. And I think you touched on a few pieces that was part of or has been my journey these past couple months. It's like this pull between feeling isolated socially and feeling like I'm the only one who's choosing to do this. Are people thinking that I'm judging them or that I'm superior to them or better than them just because I'm making this lifestyle choice for me? And then having that also rub against, I have never felt better. I've never felt more clear, more mentally supported, more at ease, like physically grounded and strong, and having to navigate. I think that terrain was just so unexpected of feeling so alone in certain communities, in certain spaces, and then also so empowered and so hyped and so good in my
Right.
body. And just navigating that terrain has been
The
so,
juxtaposition. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. The juxtaposition of that is wild because you know that you're stepping into your power. You know that you're making these choices that are brightening your personal
Mm,
expression, like raising your energy, aligning you with your highest potential. But then you have situations where you're in your contextually in situations of your old life and it feels so uncomfortable. And I totally remember similar experiences where it just became increasingly evident that there was, circles where I'm like, all right, I'm just not going to feel comfortable because even if you're sitting there in complete non-judgment or you feel it's just there's a misalignment of energy when you're not drinking and you're around people who only resonated with you when you drank, or they innately feel judged because you're not, or your choice not to drink, you were too intimately tied to them when you drank, and your choice not to drink is just going to make them feel a certain type of way. And I found for me, it was, and what I see with a lot of clients is just needing to create some level of distance in relationships that can't genuinely be supportive because of whatever it's
mm,
triggering within them. Because ultimately, too, it's such a hard transition to make, and you need and deserve support. So, if people are going to have their own weird projections onto your choices, and it's like, I'm already dealing with a lot of shit here, eliminating alcohol from my life and trying to do the inner work and get to know who I really am. Like, I can't really handle the weird projections that from other people. And so, but I think ultimately you get stronger and you can kind of handle any context within reason. Obviously, even 10 years in, I'm sure most people wouldn't be like, all right, I'm going to go sit at a bar all night. But I think the more comfortable you get in your choice, then the more comfortable you are and really tolerant of any
mm.
situation, although you probably prefer different ones. So for you, how did you overcome the challenge of feeling really uncomfortable in certain contexts?
Mm. I sat with my shit. Like
Mhm.
didn't run from the emotion, which was, an old version of me is like MOs to run away and not sit with this. I would be very intentional about the days following, a social event or social weekend and sit with the discomfort that came up for me. I said psychedelics for the win earlier because psychedelics really has been a powerful part of my healing journey. And I do microdose intentionally to
Mhm.
allow any emotions that I'm perhaps bypassing, ignoring, or suppressing to come forward. And I have leaned on psychedelics in these past 4 months, especially for this, so that I could face, wow, that felt really uncomfortable for me to be in that situation. And I was silent about something that I wish I had spoken up about. And you know what, next time I'm going to say something, and using every experience as a moment to make these micro shifts to move closer and closer to that really empowered, really grounded, really confident version of myself that honestly doesn't give a shit how other people want to live their lives as long as they feel good. That's all I care about. What I care about is like essentially putting my blinders on and saying, this is the path that I'm choosing. These are the decisions that I'm making because they serve me. And also
Mhm.
knowing that that's going to bring up rough emotions. Like the social isolation was, I think, the hardest piece for me. It brought up memories from my childhood where I was socially isolated, where I was, kicked out of a friend group and not told that I was kicked out of a friend group. And I just, figured it out. These like middle school memories that kind of came to the surface of connecting dots and how painful it can be to feel like you're on the outs
Mhm.
socially, and sitting with that and healing that and reminding myself that I'm not alone and that there is actually there's a different community that I can lean on and lean towards, and to start to open myself up to that so that the part of me and the part that we all have to feel like we belong and that we have a space in the world could be nurtured and tended to.
Oh, yeah. That's beautiful. It is so beautiful too, because I think a lot of us are scared in that transitional phase of not having community and not having relationships, so much so that we're willing to self-abandon ourselves to fit into groups that we're not really even intended to be a part of, or that we don't resonate with, or that aren't supporting us in achieving our highest potential. And that's something that is just so true. That for so many people, especially when it comes to alcohol, it's like we'd rather drink to fit in with the wrong people than get uncomfortable for a little bit to fit in with the right people, or to be in community with the right people. And yeah, I had kind of a little period of that as well. I remember it was like a couple years ago, over one summer, my fiance, I was kind of like getting to that point where you start digging your alone time. You're like, yeah, I don't really resonate with a lot of people I used to hang out with, but I'm kind of like not sad about it anymore, and I'm just enjoying my alone time. That part. And
Yes.
he's like, my fiance's like, you gotta get out there and like make some friends and stuff. I was like, yeah, yeah, I'm working on it. I'm calling it in. Relax. I just finally got happy by myself. Like, I don't need the pressure. And then it was funny because I just took that intentional time to myself to, you know, just know that more aligned relationships will flow into your life when you continue to, like you said, put blinders on in a way and stay the course of choices you know are truly in alignment with who you want to be, and have faith that the universe is going to present you with something new and different.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I would also add that because you'd asked about the benefits, one of the biggest benefits is for sure enjoying my alone time,
Mm-hmm.
enjoying relaxing because I wanted to just chill. Like I want to just relax. And I'm not relaxing and bumming because I'm recovering and I feel like garbage, but I'm relaxing because I'm treating myself to unwinding and yeah, enjoying doing macrame around the house and tending to my plants and just doing different things with my time
Mm-hmm.
that I didn't have the space for when I was literally bucketing and planning for days for trips or weekend getaways where I would like bucket in a recovery day. Like I just looking back on the time that I invested in just recovering from drinking. I think there's sometimes like a grief that doesn't get talked about with any sort of growth, healing, or transformation, of like the grief of time spent not in your power, the grief of time spent with the people that weren't lifting you up, the grief of the time spent just feeling so low, so not in your worth, and having
Mm.
to heal that part of you and to heal and extend compassion for your past versions of you that made choices that you wouldn't make today, while also being excited about the direction that you're going in.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really similar to settling for a shitty relationship, romantic relationship, and then feeling this sense of regret. You wasted so much
Mm.
time, or you gave your power away to people that you would never give your power away to now, or um, sought validation from people that you would never seek validation from now, all while just diminishing your own self-worth uh, and treating yourself in ways you would never do now. Why would I think, yeah, like holding that version of yourself in compassion and realize that there was just probably a lot of wounds to be sorted through. And then the power that comes with doing that healing work and getting comfortable in the discomfort of change, eliminating alcohol, shifting relationships. It gives you that power to then not be afraid to be alone and not have to seek out constant distractions like drinking or hanging out with people you don't resonate with, or just constantly busying yourself or having to always make plans even when you're feeling burnt out because you just don't want to be alone with your own thoughts, you know?
Yes, 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 yes.
Yeah, I did that a lot. I'm like, oh gosh, you're constantly on the go or just saying yes to all plans, regardless of how you feel, because you just don't want to sit alone with yourself.
Yeah.
And so once you get past doing some of that work and you actually can sit alone with yourself and you enjoy it
You're
and
like, I
you're like,
want to do this
oh,
all the time.
yeah, I'm like, that's why it was funny because when John, my fiance, finally said that, I was like, dude, I'm good. Like over here. I don't want any friends. I'm happy. I'm happy. And then it's funny because that was the point where then the floodgates opened and I met like women in wellness and just more women locally, and there was such a flourishing of sisterhood in my
Mm.
life. And it's funny how that works. Like once you do the work and then you accept, you release attachment to whatever it is you think you desire, then it's like, hey, I'm here.
Yeah. Releasing
So,
attachment is, yeah, I think the
mhm.
key to anything we want to experience in life. And I think the relationship with alcohol is part of it too. Like I could not have admitted that I had an attachment to alcohol years
Mhm.
ago. Like I
Yeah, that's how it is for so many people. That it's just um, a triggering thought to even the idea of sober curiosity is often triggering because it's this idea of choice
Mhm.
and not defining things in a black and white problem or not. It's the idea of thriving and that you can always be a higher version of yourself. And
Mhm.
I mean higher energetically, not high on anything. But you can always be, that you don't have to settle, and that sometimes what's been normalized with alcohol is causing many of us to settle for things that we deep down know aren't making us happy. So I think that this idea of ambiguity and self-exploration and really having to find your own answers, it places a lot more accountability on the individual than just saying, oh, you're not an alcoholic, then you're fine.
Mhm. Yeah, like it's that binary when it's not. It's many, many shades of gray.
Yeah, there's a lot more work for us to do when there's more shades of gray, and not everyone
Yeah.
really likes
Sees
that.
that. Yeah.
I know, I was like, yeah, you don't talk to me about that. I'm fine. I'm functioning. I go to work. I'm just mildly depressed and anxious. But that's fine. I'm not an alcoholic, so I'm good. But I wanted to ask you, and you have so many good insights, and just the way you say everything just lands so well. Like it. I'm here for it. But I wanted to ask, how you feel like society could benefit from shifting our programming or patterns of thinking around alcohol.
Yeah, I mean, I think collectively, if there was a shift in recognizing the role that alcohol is really playing in our lives and keeping us from stepping into the well being and the worth and the abundance that we really want, I think there would just be a collective rising, like our consciousness would rise, like there would be a cut of the ties that so many people are walking around with every single day, not realizing they're carrying all this luggage, they're carrying all this trauma from the past, and they're just shoving it down and kicking it under the bed and pretending, like you said, like, I'm fine, I'm functioning, I'm working, I pay my bills, like, I'm just mildly depressed and like have anxiety every single Sunday, Monday, maybe Tuesday and Wednesday.
Right. Just like right before the weekend so that I can do it again.
Just to do it all over again.
Right.
I think the freedom that comes with breaking free from all the conditioning, all the ties that we have, whether we got it from our parents, whether we got it from our social groups, whether we got it from our cultures, to break free from that. I mean, there's times where I struggle to articulate how freeing it really is to step into your power, to be fully in your truth, to be able to make decisions that you know are serving you and that you really don't care about the opinion of others, for you to just march to the beat of your own drum, for you to dance to the rhythm of your own music. Like it's this freedom that I deeply, deeply dream and wish that everyone on this planet could experience for generations to come, because living on the other side of that is like having that comparison now in my journey, and I know that I'll continue to evolve for the rest of my life, but being now on the side where I'm not battling low mood and just anxious thoughts flooding in and out of my mind on a regular basis, being on the other side of that where I'm more often in peace, more often feeling joy. Not to say that I don't have moments where I'm dysregulated and I'm moving through crazy emotions, but most of the time I feel really damn good. And I think that would be like the nugget of, I don't know, gold wisdom that would come from us shifting our perspective around alcohol and really anything that is normalized, that we're told is good for us, but deep down we know, deep in our being, is not serving our highest self.
Yeah. Oof, that's cool. That's what she said too. I second that. But yeah, just what you said really resonated with me about being on the other side of it. And I think having that contrast of deep pain when you know you're constantly self-abandoning through your
Mhm.
choices, and then taking full ownership of your choices, and regardless of what society tells you, regardless of what the people around you are doing, recognizing that I'm going to make choices that are in alignment with my highest self and just see where it takes you. And when you realize that it takes you to places that the majority of people aren't experiencing on a daily basis because they're subscribing to societal norms, it makes you realize that many of our societal norms should be questioned and challenged. And it does bring in, for me, the sort of intentionality behind having a population subdued by alcohol, because everyone's just so complacent and so accepting of authority, where if people really stepped into their power and developed their spiritual connection and expanded their consciousness, I think a lot of the systems we have in place now would not work so well if people were truly
Mm.
in their power, independent, like you said, marching to the beat of their own drum, more awake and curious, and with more energy to live life outside of the confines of work, home, drink, bed, kids. It's like the systems at play in our world are very much to keep us kind of busy, preoccupied, on autopilot, and like little ants, you know? And I think if we all shifted our perspective around alcohol, you said rising, and I think there'd be a revolution.
Yeah, I think there'd be a rebellion. And
Yeah.
there's days where I feel like that's what I'm doing in
Mhm.
many areas of my life, where I'm rebelling against the stories that I've bought into for so long that told me I wasn't worth it, I wasn't good enough, I wasn't doing enough, I got to move faster, quicker, and follow, the social grain. I got to do what everyone else is doing, even when it comes to building my business. It's
Mhm.
Yeah, I think we can so often tune
Compare.
into a radio station, yeah, where we're listening to messages that are keeping us so small, are keeping us
Mhm.
so caged in. And because that's the station that we've tuned into every single morning, every afternoon, every evening, and we keep feeding ourselves these messages, I think breaking free from that and deciding, what if I just turned it like 2 dials to the right and
Right.
started listening to a different message? And I think
Mhm.
curiosity is so needed, and that's why I love that there's like sober curiosity is like the concept around this space, because it's allowing us to just be curious about what's possible and allowing ourselves to be a little bit more open, expanding our perspective just a little bit to see, is there another reality that's possible
Mhm.
for me? And just slowly starting to explore that.
Right. Yeah, there's another version of myself that could be achieving way more. And I'm robbing myself of that by just subscribing to these beliefs as facts. And you hear people say beliefs as facts all the time. Like, oh, you can't not drink at a wedding, or I could never put myself on social media. Everyone would judge you, or just things where it's like, that's what you think. That's not a fact. That's not a fact of life. It's what you think based on who you surround yourself with and the messages that you choose to subscribe to, that you pull out of the ether and take on. If you decide to think, actually, I think I have an inspirational message to share, and I bet you that there's people who will be supportive. It's like there's always different ways to look at things. Or actually, I bet I could have fun at a wedding without drinking. It'd probably be fun to watch all the drunk people. Or, just there's a lot of different ways to look at things. And we just say things and adopt things so rigidly sometimes, when we are
Mhm.
all just a compilation of our experiences, our culture, like you said, our families, our friend circles. And so, yeah, that process of self examination and development of self awareness, and just the development of the idea that much of our thinking is, you know, open to interpretation, is such a crucial step, I think, in making change, because we realize, wow, we have a lot more power over
Mhm.
what we decide to think than we thought.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's interesting is that I think alcohol really, on a physiological level, gets in the way of that self examination.
Yeah.
Like by
Yeah.
nature, it's shutting down the parts of your brain that are allowing you to actually think and, yeah, be more creative and envision the future that's possible for you. Like that is actually getting turned down. So by
Mhm.
nature, it's like you're in this, I think you can get really caught up in this cycle that you just kind of, yeah, remain disempowered.
Yeah. Oh, such a good chat. Okay, so I'm like, what else can I get you to talk about? Okay, I have a couple more questions. I always do this at the end. I'm like, all right, shit, gotta cram in a couple more questions in the last 5 minutes. But so I wanted to ask, we talked a lot about relationships and just kind of feeling when you shift energetically, it's very common for your relationships to shift, whether that is with alcohol or other changes you're making in your life. And that can be really challenging for people, to feel alone, and especially when you're trying to make changes for the better and then you feel this sense of alienation. It just compounds the difficulty and challenges of making positive changes for yourself when you feel alone doing it. So, how have you built supportive community, sisterhood along your sober curious path?
That's an area that I want to develop further. I mean, having connections like with you and just a handful of others in my life that I know are choosing a similar path, it's pretty small right now. And it's something that I really want to expand because I'm
Mm.
a really, really big believer that community is critical to our well being, no matter what type of community that is, whatever it is that we're working towards, to have, yeah, like support systems, support beams around your beliefs and what your goals are, and that the people that you're surrounding yourself with are championing that. I'm really grateful that my partner has been such a big champion. And while he hasn't chosen to go down the sober curious path, he's scaled back his consumption quite a bit, also examining how it's played a role in his life. And so that's, I think, really important for you to have someone in your life, minimum one person that is really rallying for you. But I will say that I for sure want to expand, yeah, my sisterhood and being around
Mhm.
more people that are aligned in wanting to serve themselves in every way possible.
Yeah. We have so many parallels to our process, just not drinking as like a catalyst for more confidence with business and entrepreneurship. And my partner still drinks too, but he's like totally shifted his relationship and super supportive. So it'd be really cool to do another podcast when you're like 6 months, or we can
Yay.
celebrate your milestones on the podcast and just talk about different aspects. I think having partners who still drink and how you can navigate that is such a huge topic, for a lot of people. It'd be really cool to talk about that too, and just how it is possible to have tons of thriving relationships with people in your life who make different choices if they're
Yes.
supportive, I think is the like underscore, right?
Yes.
I don't
Yes.
I hang out with people who still get wasted on occasion, but they're so supportive of my choice to not drink that we find so many similarities. We have so much more in common, even if maybe our relationship with alcohol is different, and so it's like
Yes.
when you can feel that genuine support coming through, I think that's what really matters, even if you're choosing different life paths, or making choices that aren't exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
And
100%.
so we'll be scheduling more podcasts. And then yeah, so I'll leave it there because I wanted to talk about developing hobbies and stuff. But since we will do a follow-up podcast, we can talk about it then. And yeah, I just wanted to say too that you have such a beautiful way of an eloquent way of explaining so many things that resonate with me, and it just hits home so much, and I feel like it will definitely resonate to other people in the
Mm.
way that you kind of formulate your thoughts. It's really cool to hear someone be able to so profoundly express certain aspects that I know for me really are like, yeah, that's exactly how I felt. And it is sometimes hard to explain in a way that gives the whole picture.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you for connecting with me and reaching out to me and wanting to set this up to highlight and celebrate my 4 months. Ooh, ooh,
I
ooh.
wanted, before we have to go though, I want you to share, where people can find you.
Mm.
And these aren't always it'll be a while before it's posted, so I always say like don't include any specific dates you have on the horizon because probably like 2 months before I post this. But do share like where people can find you, if they are interested in diving in more to what you have to offer.
Love to. So right now I'm on social media on Instagram. So that's at expand with Lidiann. And if people want to work with me, I do both coaching and breath work, and recently started weaving them together to do breathwork coaching. And
Mhm.
yeah, if anyone's looking to explore all these patterns, the conditioning that's keeping you stuck and back in life, time to break free, trying to let loose,
Yes, honey.
step into your power, come on in.
Yeah, and we will have to do something after I do my breathwork certification. We should do something together,
Yes,
like a
yes,
class, since we live so close.
yes, I'm
But
so down.
yeah, girl, I'm so proud of you and happy for you. And it's just so cool to see all of the positive changes you're experiencing. And thank you for coming on. And
Yeah.
yes, stay tuned. If anyone's listening and they want to hear more about sober curiosity and have specific kind of themes in mind that you're curious about learning more about, definitely comment on the Instagram or the Spotify or the YouTube or whatever, and let us know like what themes within sober curiosity are interested in hearing more about, and we'll design our next episode around it. Anyways,
Beautiful.
until next time, bye
Thank you.
people.
Thank you. Bye.